Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to international pressure over the creation of a Palestinian state alongside an Israeli one. We can put this up here. Here he is speaking to the Knesset yesterday with an official declaration saying that Israel absolutely rejects any type of diktat from the international community that they agree to a Palestinian state. Now, this is Saagar, it's sort of like that tweet format where somebody says, nobody, absolutely nobody, Benjamin Netanyahu. It's like, yeah, okay, there's been international pressure, but also he didn't have to come out with this declaration. Like, we get it. Like, he's been against a Palestinian state since like the 1990s. It's only in the last maybe several months that has really been absorbed by the media, because people like you and I have been following this for a long time, have always been able to understand that Netanyahu is against a Palestinian state. He would occasionally say it openly that he opposed the Palestinian state. We even remember when he said the reason that he helped to facilitate Hamas remaining in power was so that you could divide the Palestinian leadership between the West Bank and Gaza, because a united Palestinian leadership would bring pressure to bear for a Palestinian state. And so by splitting the Palestinians, you prevent the formation of a Palestinian state. He has made his entire argument for why his entire legacy has been prevention of a Palestinian state. And his argument for continuing in office is that he is the only one that can manipulate the United States effectively to make sure that there is no Palestinian state. Like, that is his entire rationale. Now but this reflects increasing, I think, global pressure to say, all right, come on. It's been a long time. Let's resolve this.
I saw an analysis that this was Bibi in October 6th mode, as in this is political Bibi. There's a reason he's saying this in Hebrew, except he's reflecting the conditions of the war. He's trying to get this coalition together. He's trying to get the right-wingers to support him. As you said, a major part of something he often admits in Hebrew is, I am the reason there is no Palestinian state.
Right.
Like, he forgets that we can hit translate. But
the old translate button.
It's actually pretty easy.
We didn't have that in the 90s.
Translate to just show something like that. But he says it very quiet, not even quietly, openly behind the scenes. My question to you is, in the context of U.S. foreign policy and Western foreign policy, will this actually matter? Are the Palestinians correct that this is just lip service from the U.S.? Because we keep saying there has to be a resumption of a Palestinian state, a recognition of that at the end of this process, period, end of story. And if he is not going to be a legitimate negotiating partner, we continue to provide them aid and to tacitly support their actions. Is this not then the default position of the United States government at this point?
It is, as long as we keep shipping arms and money and giving that tacit and explicit support. It doesn't matter what we say. What matters is what we do. And it also, in some ways, doesn't matter what Netanyahu says there. It matters what Netanyahu does. And that brings us to our next VO here. What Netanyahu is currently doing is building what's called Highway 749. And so if you're listening to the podcast, what we're rolling here is a documentary from Israel's Channel 14 that played on Saturday. This is a highway that is cutting across the middle of the Gaza Strip, basically from the Negev over almost all the way to the sea, looking like it's going to become some type of Berlin Wall situation that bifurcates the two, the Gaza Strip into two. In other words, if it was the largest open-air prison on October 6th, that now it would be the two largest open-air prisons just split in two. And according to this documentary that aired on Israeli TV, you wouldn't even be able to travel, from one side to the other if you're a Gazan. Since the Oslo Accords came into effect in the 1990s, travel has been increasingly restricted for Palestinians, which is one reason travel, civil liberties, the economy, et cetera, has been increasingly curtailed. One of the reasons that Hamas has kind of gained in influence among Palestinians, because a lot of Palestinians say, look, the parties that advocated for this Oslo Accord have only led to things getting materially worse for us. Not that it's status quo and things haven't gotten better for us, but things were actually better in the 80s and 90s than they are now. If you lived in Gaza on October 6th, you basically couldn't leave. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you could leave if you could get some type of permit. That could take months or years. You'd have people with health complications who would die before they got the permits to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're saying that that's going to be cut even tighter. And so, and we're going to talk a little bit later about the West Bank in this block. But the problem in the West Bank is all of these different Bantustans and all these different settlements that.
What do you mean
block,
by that? People who aren't familiar.
Oh,
with
so in South Africa, you'd have these like little tiny areas that are cordoned off that you basically couldn't leave
during apartheid.
During apartheid, and so you just make them smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's the main thing making it so hard for Palestinians to have any sovereignty in the West Bank, because there's something like 700,000 settlers dividing the West Bank up. Mm-hmm. Now, if you divide Gaza up too, it really fits into what Netanyahu is arguing here, that he's going to be the guy that is going to change the reality on the ground to make it so there cannot be a Palestinian state. Just can't happen. So
with that establishment of the highway, do you see that as establishing Israeli control over that territory,
that's
settler policy? Like what is it?
The goal there would be that, you'd have watchtowers, mm-hmm. and you'd have a sophisticated security apparatus with walls. They've got the wall up by the West Bank.
Just like October 6th, though. It basically seems like they're doubling down on the same strategy.
Yes, it's quote unquote managing the conflict, mm-hmm. just managing it harder.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this combines with some movement out of Egypt. I actually really am curious what you think about this, because there's a variety of ways. Let's put this up there, please, on the screen, guys. We have video here of Egypt that is building a massive fence around the Rafah border. They're calling it a logistics zone. More likely, Ryan, it seems to be in response to be an anticipated Rafah mm-hmm. offensive by the IDF that would somehow pen in Palestinians, I'm assuming, who, if they were able to breach the Rafah crossing, would then be included in this zone. But, I mean, seems strategically important because it would mean that these Palestinian civilians would be in some odd no man's land where they're technically inside of Egypt, but the Egyptians are keeping them out, not allowing them to resettle or whatever into the Sinai.
Yeah, since December, the fear has been that the Rafah crossing would be breached by a mob of people who just overwhelm security there, because there'd be so much pressure brought to bear on it by the suffering of the people on the other side of it. Egypt, for just as long, has been reinforcing it, putting tanks there, sending out declarations saying that this absolutely cannot happen. From Egypt's perspective, they see 1 million refugees, pouring into the Sinai Desert as massively destabilizing. Was basically a dictatorship that they have over there. So this is, unless Sisi wants to, head to Florida and retire, this is an existential question for the Egyptian government, and they're being extremely clear that they're not going to allow what seems to be the only thing that makes any sense from Israel. What are they doing here? And the only thing that makes sense is that they're driving into Rafah with such ferocity, with the hope that they will then force them into the Sinai Desert. So if you build these cement barriers, that relieves some pressure on the border, because a lot of the people see, okay, let's say we could overwhelm the border and bust through there. Then all we've done is get into this desert area and are staring at these, cement walls.
Right. And that's where the big question is, are the Egyptians going to revoke the Camp David peace accords?
They've threatened to change?
Yeah, they've threatened to do that. This would appear to indicate that, and this is the other big question, are they coordinating with the Israelis? Are they like, hey, you got to wait up for us to put up some barriers and all that, because we can't be having a mass expulsion? But at the same time, that appears to be what some of the goals of the Israeli government are in this case. And if they do go into this so-called no man's land, I mean, what are the odds that they ever actually are able to leave? Probably low, in terms in terms of what the actions currently anticipate for them.
That's exactly right. Yeah. If there was some trust, like let's say that the population turned on Hamas and actually wanted Israel to kind of round up and root out all of the Hamas fighters. And there was some faith from the Palestinian people that Israel would, of course, just allow them to return and help with the reconstruction of their homes. then sure, you set up a refugee camp in the Sinai, and the battle unfolds, and then people come back. That is none of that is the case, though. Not a single piece of that is true. The Palestinians do not trust Israel to allow them back into Gaza if they ever left. Even though currently, like on an individual level, most Palestinians, it seems like if they could get out of this horrifying hell on earth situation that they're in temporarily, would get out.
Right.
But now, if Israel was actually serious about this, they have, and lots of people have actually suggested this, but they have not taken them up on it, which shows what their plan is. Open up the Israeli Negev desert, to create you wouldn't need a whole lot of territory to create a refugee camp, and you could say, men over 60. I think they've said boys under 15.
Right. No military age males,
like
women
that.
and children, etc.
And women and children,
Right.
and that put 1 million people there. But that is Israeli territory, and so that would kind of guarantee the right of return to Gaza, and that seems to be the problem with that plan.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't considered that really at all.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.